It's Mozz, it's Chaz, and we're talking about Jessica Jones. Hey, it's the AKA JonesCast. Oh, sweet Christmas, my friends. Yes, we are now officially just going to go with the AKA JonesCast because we're not really even though we're still part of that Cage Cast and part of that Enough Said feed, it's time for Jessica to have her own place, at least until Iron Fist starts, and then we're going to have to transition into that, but we may come back to Jessica Jones later.
Yeah.
Okay, tonight's episode, aka 99 Friends, Season 1, Episode 4, a new case demands attention as Jessica tries to find out who's spying on her for Kilgrave. Trish's radio show yields unexpected consequences. Okay, let's hear, of course, directed by David Petrarca, written by, let's get to the actual people who wrote the episodes, not the people who wrote the comic book. Yes, we all love you, Bendis. You don't have to put your name first in the IMDb credits. Okay, this was written by Hilly Hicks Jr. and Melissa Rose. Well, it was created by Melissa Rosenberg, created by Hilly Hicks Jr. Okay. Anyway. So, yeah, a good episode. Well, I mean, okay, so, you know, this is actually kind of a soft episode for a lot of people. I'm going to say that right up front. I liked it because I felt it built...
Really good episode.
I'm sorry, what? I'm sorry, Maz, what did you say? Maz?
Second, sorry. You said really good... Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. No, I lost you for a second. I couldn't hear you for a second. I didn't say anything, though.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah. Well, like I said, a lot of people find this to be kind of a soft episode. I don't know if you felt it was soft or if you felt it was good.
I thought it was really, really good.
Okay, great. Okay, so you and I are actually kind of in agreement on this. There are people that feel it's soft because you don't really advance the Kilgrave or the Jessica arc, but you do a nice bit of world building, and there are things that you see in this, especially if you've already watched it and you go back and rewatch it, which I am, where you really get a lot of hat tipping to things that was really subtle, but when you go back and watch it again, you go, oh yeah, I totally see what they were doing with that. I totally see how they were setting that up and what they were trying to build towards. And like for me, one of the things that keeps on hitting me is how much, let me find his name here, how much Simpson, Will Travel, looks like Chris Evans. And how much they made him look like Chris Evans here, because, of course, as I think we mentioned this last episode, that, you know, this character is a Captain America, part of the Captain America. Well, his character in the Marvel Comics, which is different here, but in the Marvel Comics, he was part of a super soldier program. He was meant to be the next Captain America, became the next Captain America briefly, and then went insane. And we get a lot of hints in this episode about his insanity and the fact that maybe he has dealt with things like Kilgrave before, that maybe the unhinged qualities of his behavior that we're seeing here didn't necessarily start with Kilgrave,
Right.
And I thought that was a nice thing. And our basic conceit of this episode, and I believe we saw, this is our first time we're meeting Audrey Eastman, played by Jessica Hedge, who has the conceit that she wants to catch her husband cheating on her and needs to hire Jessica for this. And for what it's worth, I liked, how suspect Jessica is of these clients coming into her. Obviously, she has to be that she knows that Kilgrave is back, but you kind of feel that maybe she'd be just as skeptical, even had she not had Kilgrave come back, just because she's a skeptical person about why people want to use her services.
Right.
And And then, of course, like I said, we get a lot of interesting veers in this. We have Hogarth. We have what I think was one of the best scenes so far with Hogarth and her wife, Wendy.
Oof.
When Hogarth is taking, her new
secretary.
her side piece. Side piece looking to move up in the world, though. Hey, our first lady started as a side piece. Don't ever criticize being a side piece. Hey, so Hogarth is taking Pam, her side piece, to this restaurant where, as it turns out, Jerry had proposed to Wendy ages ago, and cold-blooded, yeah. But you know what I thought is so telling about this is how cold-blooded Jerry really is. Just in the fact that, she doesn't see anything wrong with it. Like she says, she doesn't get every restaurant in New York. She doesn't get to say this is her restaurant. But of course, what Pam does.
In my opinion, I think she honestly forgot.
I'm sorry?
I said, in my opinion, I think she honestly forgot that that's where she proposed.
That's possible, man. I never even thought of that. See, I thought that was really just meant to be a. Honestly, my take on it was that hey, I go to this restaurant a lot. I've done a lot of things in this restaurant. But I guess that even goes to you that maybe she just forgot that. Oh yeah, I guess I proposed to you here. But I kind of thought that was more that it was very much a dominance display. The fact that she may have even forgot that is interesting. But what I thought was interesting is that even if you assume that, when she finds out, there's no remorse to it. She is like,
right.
And
because the thing is, to me, I would be afraid if the secretary found that out, because that would not make her feel good. So I think if she remembered, she would have avoided it.
Yeah, but we also see that, so clearly the secretary did find out, but still Jerry has no qualms about it. It's like, don't care. This is I'm moving on. This is my new life. And to her credit, the secretary is like, no, this is not, I am not going to be, I have to be your side piece. I'm not going to be the side piece that is, peeing on all of the memories of your wife, Because for nothing else, I'm sure she doesn't want to just be, the person who is just there to dig in the knife at the ex, to be the younger, prettier side piece, regardless of her own personal qualities, and that her existence is only predicated on the fact that she is, to some extent, a younger, blonder version of the first wife.
Right.
Yeah. But that was a really excellent scene. We of course get we see that Pam is real shook. Not Pam, Patsy is real shook after being attacked by Will Simpson. Yeah, and why do I want to see that? That's weird. They're calling him Will. For some reason, the character I believe his name is supposed to be Frank. I don't know why they're calling him Will here. But anyway, I'll deal with it some other time. I don't know if that's something that they've recently changed, but I'll have to go back. I have to go back into my Wikipedia archives to look that up. Anyway, but yeah, Frank Simpson is his name is supposed to be.
Well, I can.
Nuke is Frank Simpson. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, that's what I needed to confirm. Yeah. Anyway, so but they changed his name to Will here for some reason. I don't know if that's a glitch in IMDb or what. But anyway, but he comes back to her house and he wants to break in because he wants to find the body.
Yeah, he's not getting in trouble.
Yeah. And what I liked in that is, again, we get this sense of these limitations of Kilgrave's powers, but also I think the flightiness of Kilgrave. That Kilgrave ran, but never really went back to tie up his loose ends, which goes to this thing with Kilgrave that, yes, he is a supervillain, but he's, in the comic books, he was never like the world-dominating supervillain. He was never the supervillain who you worried about, because honestly, once you knew what his power set was and how you could work around it, because people always find ways to work around these things, he wasn't as scary, usually what you have in these characters, what you have as their basic limitation is their lack of imagination. And I think that Kilgrave is a classic character for whom lack of imagination is why he is much less of a threat than, say, Doctor Doom or Magneto or any other real supervillain that you're going to face, because all Kilgrave is going to do is, petty foolishness, not necessarily foolishness, because obviously we see when we get to our support group that there are people whose lives have been really literally destroyed, but you also have, you have a guy who was just told to give over his coat and a guy who was told to abandon his son.
Right. Yeah, I think that's sort of where it can get tricky, is you give this superhero or the supervillain such an incredible power that you would imagine that it would be applied justly, in that, it would be used to its full potential. And that's what, could get frustrating with the character when you can do anything. What is the interesting thing to do?
Well, yeah, and the reality is I guess maybe even there's an argument in here that, nothing is interesting when you really break it down. That, that when you could do anything, do you even really want to do that much? I mean,
yeah.
And it's like, if that's the thing. If I suddenly had the power to make anyone do whatever I wanted, probably mostly what I would do is eat at fancy restaurants too, I might not be as malicious as Kilgrave is, but, right. I would probably eat free at fancy restaurants a lot. And, of course, I would order off menu, just because that's the kind of guy I am, I mean, yeah, I'd have this urge to go to Washington and whisper in the ears of certain people, but but the reality is that I would probably also understand that that's a whole chore, and how do I know they don't have protections against that? One of the things I always find funny about a character like Kilgrave is how rarely he's encountered superpowered beings in a superpowered universe. And just the fact that, you walk into somebody's penthouse in New York City, you're lucky you didn't walk into, some nest of Hydra agents and Sorcerer Supreme. And, of course, maybe he has more than he knows. And just that they turn him back around and release him back into the wild because they don't really have time for his nonsense. That's always this, but it's always a thing where, like, if you are a character who is a monster, and maybe this is just me, I would never assume I was the biggest monster, but then again, maybe that's why I'm not really a monster. Maybe that's what separates monsters from regular people, is monsters never think that there's a bigger monster out there, they never think that there's someone who could possibly take them down. But we'll have to see how that plays out for old Kilgrave. Now, one of the things I liked, and again, like I said, there's very little, and this is why a lot of people feel it's a soft episode, because there's very little that Jessica does in this. Jessica is really kind of a background character in this episode. But it is a great episode for building out everybody else's story. I really love the Simpson Walker scenes, specifically him giving her the gun as his ways to make amends.
Yeah.
And what I loved about it is this.
Yeah, no, I loved everything about the two getting to know each other.
Yeah.
No, I loved everything about both of them are getting to know each other. His drive, someone that went through the exact same thing, They were both victims here, so they sort of connect in that. And then this great little moment where he's telling her the story about the G.I. Joes and the Barbies and the saving of the Barbies. And I kept thinking to myself, it's pretty like an obvious bit of dialogue to progress the story, but then he says it himself. It was intentional that he wanted to tell her this story just to drive the point home of the kind of person he was. I thought that was really interesting, and that gave the dialogue a bit more realism.
Yeah, well, you know what I loved. See, and again, and yes, and that was, the whole, just the idea that, yes, the GI Joes all died, but they accomplished the mission. They saved Barbie. That's a great line. But although obviously, as essentially the god of that universe who created that situation in which all the GI Joes died, it probably also reveals a little bit of the darkness that is deep within his soul as well. That he created he essentially created a what is it? Nakashi Maru, Kobayashi Maru from Star Trek, that unwinnable situation that he sent his Joes into to essentially, now, of course, not for nothing, the character playing Frank or Will Simpson here, he's probably not really old enough to have played with 12-inch G.I. Joes. Because those were kind of a collector's, because he was born in 1980. And when I was a kid in 1980, those big G.I. Joes were actually going out of style. He would have been playing with the smaller G.I. Joes, which would have, been Lilliputians compared to a Barbie. So, just a little bit of toy nerdery there for you, He wouldn't have played with those G.I. Joes. He would have played with the Hammer G.I. Joes, So, but I guess those G.I. Joes could have saved Barbie as well. It's just that, it's a little different when it's the, 3-inch G.I. Joes going up against the, 9-inch, 12-inch Barbie.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, but what I loved is this kind of, and this is a great series about the lives of, and that's like the one way you can always describe it, is these are all damaged people and all damaged in unique and beautiful ways. Is he gives her the gun and she thinks this is like the sweetest thing. Because she says, "Is this legal?" And he says, "No, not at all." And what he's basically telling her is, this is an untraceable gun, that when you kill someone with this gun, there will be no way for anyone to tie this gun back to you. Meaning you drop this gun in the East River, and even if they find it, it's not your gun.
Right.
And she smiles at that, both in this idea of, this is a powerful tool I've been given. And this is something that he knows is a good thing to give me. He gets me.
I think also it shows that he's sacrificing some of his own identity to give this to her. It's like it's an illegal gun, but he's giving her a gun. He's a cop. He's not supposed to be doing that. So he's going back on his code to do it. So, it shows a bit more of his commitment to the cause and to her.
Yeah, absolutely. It's actually a really great scene. And then, of course, the other thing that I love about the gun in the scene and the way it is used is when they later cut to them, sort of having a coffee talk, over her coffee table. You see the gun is on the table and her hand is on the gun still.
Absolutely. Because she's no fool.
She's no fool. No, she's got the gun. And it's like, you gave me the gun. And she tells him as he comes in, just so you know, I might accidentally shoot you. Now, just to get back to Jessica's story, because again, like we said, this is a odd. This is a story where Jessica's kind of out of it because she kind of chases a wild goose because she thinks this character, Audrey Eastman, played by Jessica Hetch, is a Kilgrave plant. And when she breaks in on her and Carlo, played by Ricky Paul Golden, essentially, faking a sex scene so that she'll burst in so that they can catch her. It turns out this is just a whole anti-superhuman thing because she's mad about the incident. And again, one can point out, man, and I it's just always this thing I come back to is like, why was no one upset about the Hulk breaking Harlem? It's like, why? But again, I guess that's white privilege, man.
That she said, well, this says exactly about that. Why don't you go find the green guy?
Well, yeah, I mean, they do recognize that. Well, of course, no one wants to find the green guy because the green guy will kick your butt. As Randy learned on GammaCast, you can't just mess with the Incredible Hulk. Don't make him angry. You will not like him when he is, in fact, angry. He's
always angry.
Yeah. So let's see here. So
I think the other really, really interesting thing was finding out that the neighbor was actually the one photographing her this whole time.
Oh, yeah. And that winds up being one of the most powerful arcs in the story as you break it down because, in fact, I do think there was something last episode that I think I have heard, but I never got around to double checking it. But I think he made this point to her that she's the reason he takes drugs, which I think comes back later. But
yeah, she says, you don't need. I don't want to be the reason you use. He goes, I need a reason or something like that.
Yeah, and it's really great, and we're gonna see a lot more of that. And this is the opening tantalization of that. This is where we come in and we say, oh, she's just becoming aware of something that's been going on behind her for way longer.
Yeah.
And that's the real crux of it, is that, and there's the secondary aspect of this about how little you can trust anyone in this. That even someone that you seem to feel like can feel safe with, because that's the thing is this guy Malcolm. He is clearly a drug addict. He is clearly unstable, but at no time does anyone question his existence. At no time does anyone say, how does this guy who's stoned all the time have an apartment in Hell's Kitchen? How is he making rent? I guess probably we'll assume, he must be doing something.
He's probably Section 8.
Even that is not. Yeah, it's entirely possible he could still be in Grandma's Section 8 apartment, because we do see Grandma's picture there, and a little shrine at the very end. We see a picture of him in more in better days, you can say. You see a picture of him, clean cut and smiling next to an older woman, and it is fascinating. One other thing I kind of want to jump back to, which is the guy with the jacket, which is one of the first guys that we see that Jessica recognized. This guy is telling the truth, that he was controlled by Kilgrave, because she realizes he's the same height and build as Kilgrave. That's why Kilgrave wanted that jacket, because Kilgrave knew the jacket would fit him. Mm-hmm. And it's this great thing where he makes this point, I know it's not the same as killing your parents, but, I was controlled. I lost my will. And, one of the things that you always come into in these stories, because there is such, you can't not look at the sexual dynamics of a Kilgrave character and what it means in the way we approach it. And here's this, it's like someone says, oh, hey, he grabbed your whatever. It's not like he raped you. And it's like, well, I know you can say, yes, it would be so much worse if that other thing had happened, but the fact of the matter is, finding myself in that point where I am powerless.
Without choice.
Yeah, without choice is disturbing and overwhelming, and really, whether he tells you to kill your mother or, cook this recipe for him, that the scars can sometimes be the same, even if the mental scars can be the same, even if the physical scars aren't. There are people that have physical scars. In fact, one of the women there, you can see she's got some kind of crazy burn on her face, which we'll find out more about later. Sometimes the physical scars are the easiest because those are the things that everyone can acknowledge and handle.
Believe.
Yeah, well, not only believe, but can have sympathy for, Because, I see how this hurts your life. But, here's this guy, his life mostly didn't change because he gave up his jacket to this guy.
Right.
But at the same time, it's the same manipulation that the guy who gave up his son endured, And it's not to say that giving up your son and giving up a jacket is the same, but it is to say that the intent is the same and the process is the same. The process of making someone be less than human to you remains the same.
Right.
And I think if there's anything that you can take away from the Jessica Jones series, it is that it is a response to this idea of making people feel less than human. That is wrong. It doesn't matter if they're doing it in big ways or they're doing it in small ways. Every time your life is manipulated by someone who treats you as less than human, it is bad for you and for society and the world, and those people are villains. Yeah.
I think that's why I love this episode so much, because they teased us a little bit with Kilgrave the last episode, but here you really get the mental strain he can put you under, not just by doing anything, but just by you knowing that he exists. Mm-hmm. Watching your shoulder and seeing the kind of damage he can do to you. And the saddest part of it was with that 8.5-year-old girl.
Oh, God.
You see things like that, and you see the reaction on Jessica's face, and she's just heartbroken and feels helpless, and it's a incredibly confining feeling. And you really get a sense of that through, everything that happens with Malcolm and with the little girl and all these stories about these people. And especially about the guy leaving his son. And it's just, I turned around and I saw him sitting there just crying. And you picture that moment in your head, and it really gets to you. I think that's why I love this episode so much, because it really is scaring me about what Kilgrave is.
Oh, yeah. And, for what it's worth, to go back into the rape metaphor, one of the things that people often have to deal with, I mean, actually, who often has to deal with it the most is actually male victims of rape. Which is the idea that during the rape they may orgasm. And then people, because it's like your entire body rebels, and that person who is sitting there and he's saying, I left my kid behind because it was what I wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, because he made him want to do it. He made him, feel that was a good thing. And it's like, and what it is reducing a person to their own animalistic nature in saying, all you are is a pleasure center and I've triggered it, so I am not culpable. But of course you are. And that's the thing. This show really, and this episode in particular, like I say, if all you're looking for, well, you know what, here's what I'm going to say. If all you're looking for is explosions and car crashes and laser beam eyes, go watch a DC film. Marvel films tend to go a little bit deeper and will deal with stuff that is a little bit more complex, because it is not about gods among men. It is about men who suddenly have been cursed with the powers of gods. And every great power is its own curse, and it is pretty messed up. But
Yeah.
I enjoy watching it because it's all fictional.
You bring up a really, really interesting point. I've always been wondering what the mechanism is by which his powers work, and you just said something really interesting. He just affects the pleasure center of the brain. He makes a suggestion that you just hear, and then whatever he's doing is affecting the pleasure center of your brain to on that thought that he just fed you really, really strongly.
Well, yeah, I mean, essentially, they actually do give you a whole explanation that's a little bit more pseudo-scientific-y. But the way I always look at it, it's sort of like, if you ever read The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy series, I think it's actually in the last book, Mostly Harmless, that they actually go into this, which is this idea that the way that you control robots isn't with any 3 laws or anything like that, but what you do is you just give them a pleasure center. But you make the pleasure center triggered by whatever it is you need the robot to do. So if you have a robot whose job it is to sweep floors, that robot loves to sweep floors. Nothing makes that robot happier than to sweep a floor. And when you come in and muddy up that floor, that robot is so happy because he gets to sweep the floor again. If you create a robot whose entire job is to perform heart surgery, then that's just what it loves, and it's gonna go out and buy you some cheesy hot dogs just so it hopes it may one day get to unclog your arteries. And that's the idea, is that that's how those robots are designed in that universe. And of course, and the gag in it is that basically if you take a hairpin and stick it in a certain part of most of those robots, you short circuit it so that everything gives them pleasure, and they just roll around on the floor all day. But because that's just so good to just roll on the floor. Essentially that's what I kind of feel that is because Kilgrave's powers, it's always said to be persuasion, and it's still that here is that he convinces you that this is the best idea. And in order for you to feel that it's the best idea, you've got to be feeling that oxytocin release. You've got to be feeling like, yeah, let's do that. I'm going to do that. And again, going back to that basic idea of, having that orgasmic moment against your will, that is why it really resonates as a terrifying thing, because you don't want what's happening, but because of the nature of what's happening, there's a quality to it that is making your body think, hey, this is okay. Or even not that, your body is saying it's okay, it's that your body is like just doing the responses it's been programmed to do, even though your mind, which is sentient, can say, no, I don't want this. And, that's, anyone who reads a lot of mind control fiction knows that there's always that sign about the true self screaming no, even as you're forced to do everything, And honestly, to me, that's like the truest of horrors, is that feeling of not being in control of your own body and mind. And that's why I think this series really resonates on a lot of levels for a lot of people, because I really think it is kind of the ultimate horror. And I think we do get that really teased well here and presented well here.
Very much.
Any final thoughts on tonight's episode, Mozz?
No, except that I absolutely loved it.
Yeah. It was a fantastic episode. They're well-written episodes, and what I think sometimes is that, when people watch these things, they may be watching it purely as the genre, and they can get upset when things aren't as action-packed as they'd like. Sometimes you have to understand that there's another episode coming that's going to have more action, don't worry. We're going to get lots of action as this series unfolds. But every so often, you've got to be willing to say, let's find out who's getting punched and why. Let's find out what the reasoning is.
And why I should care.
Well, exactly. You need to. I always go back to that line in Idiocracy. I believe in a day when you will watch a show and not just want to know that it's farting, but want to know who is farting and why. You know, and that is the thing. You want to know why this is important here, and that's what we're working towards, and I like that. Okay, Mozz. If anyone wants to reach out to you on the social medias or electronic communication systems or any other method in which they might do so, how can they find you?
They can reach out to me on Gmail at mozzmanzor@gmail.com, or you can find me on Facebook at Mozz Manzor. That's MOZZMANZOOR.
And, of course, you can always write to me in that old-fashioned email way, as our Mozz and Poz once did, at superconnectivityblog@gmail.com. That's superconnectivityblog, all one word, at gmail.com. I got to come up with a better email address, I think. And, of course, you can always follow me on Twitter at Charlie Esser. That's CharlieEsser. Look for the 2 E's in the middle for quality. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming out for another AKA Jessica Jones cast. We really want to be your friend. Have a good night.